If you look at Crimea on a map, it does not immediately announce itself as the center of anything. The Crimean peninsula juts downward like a sprawling, irregular landmass connected to the mainland by a narrow isthmus. It is a peninsula roughly the size of Massachusetts, attached to southern Ukraine by a sliver of land only a few miles wide. It has no oil fields comparable to the Persian Gulf. It has no major choke point like the Strait of Hormuz. And yet, since 2014, Crimea has been the most contested piece of real estate in Europe. Russia spent billions building a bridge to it, fortified it with advanced anti-access weaponry, and made clear that any threat to the peninsula is treated as a threat to the Russian state itself. The common explanation is that Crimea matters because of Sevastopol, the port city on its southern tip that hosts Russia's Black Sea Fleet. But that explanation, while technically correct, misses the deeper logic. The question is not why Russia wants a warm water port. The question is why a warm water port in Crimea became a matter of national survival rather than just military convenience. To answer that, you have to go back 200 years, to a war that most people have forgotten, and to a defeat that scarred the Russian national consciousness so deeply that it still dictates policy today. Crimea entered the Russian Empire in 1783, under Catherine the Great. She annexed it from the Ottoman Empire after a series of wars, and she immediately understood something that her successors never forgot. The Black Sea was Russia's only year-round maritime outlet. The Baltic Sea froze in winter. The Arctic was icebound. The Pacific was impossibly distant. If Russia wanted to project naval power into the Mediterranean and the Atlantic, it needed a warm water port on the Black Sea. And the best harbor on the Black Sea was Sevastopol, a natural, deep-water bay that could shelter an entire fleet. So Catherine built a naval base. She invited sailors, shipbuilders, and merchants. Within decades, Sevastopol became the heart of Russian naval power in the south. For the next 70 years, this arrangement worked. Russia fought wars against the Ottomans, expanded its influence in the Balkans, and used Sevastopol as the launching point for its southern ambitions. The city became a symbol of imperial strength. Then came 1853, and a miscalculation that would cost Russia dearly. Tsar Nicholas I believed he could dismantle the Ottoman Empire without interference from the other European powers. But, he was wrong. At the Battle of Sinop in November 1853, the Russian Black Sea Fleet just annihilated an Ottoman squadron. The destruction was so complete that it really alarmed Britain and France. Both powers feared Russia gaining too much influence in the Mediterranean. So, they declared war on Russia, and the Crimean War began. The war is often remembered today for Florence Nightingale and the charge of the Light Brigade, but for Russia, it was something else entirely. A demonstration of just how vulnerable Crimea really was. The Allies landed on the western coast of Crimea in September 1854 and marched south toward Sevastopol. The Russian army, which had been overconfident and, honestly, pretty poorly supplied, tried to stop them at the Alma River. They were routed. What followed was an 11-month siege. The Allies bombarded Sevastopol from both land and sea. The Russian garrison held out with extraordinary determination, even sinking their own ships to block the harbor, and fighting street by street through the ruins of their own city. But, honestly, the outcome was never in doubt. Russia simply lacked the industrial capacity to resupply its forces. The troops were armed with outdated smoothbore muskets against Allied rifles. The roads from the Russian interior turned to mud, and, well, the supply lines just collapsed. In September of 1855, the Allies captured the Malakoff Redoubt, which was really the linchpin of Sevastopol's defenses. The Russians evacuated the city, scuttling what little remained of their fleet. They had, well, lost the war. The peace treaty that followed imposed some pretty harsh terms. Russia was forbidden from maintaining a navy in the Black Sea, and its fortifications were to be demolished. The fleet that Catherine had built was, just like that, gone. For the Russian elite, this was not merely a military defeat, it was, honestly, a national humiliation. Sevastopol was the symbol of their southern power, and they had watched it fall. The loss became embedded in Russian memory. Schools taught about the heroic defense, not the strategic failure. Veterans told stories of ordinary sailors and soldiers who had held out against impossible odds. The lesson that Russian planners took from the Crimean War was, honestly, pretty simple. Never again could Crimea be left vulnerable to a seaborne invasion. Never again could the Black Sea Fleet be neutralized by a coalition of maritime powers. And, this lesson ended up shaping Soviet naval strategy for decades. When the Red Army retook Crimea from the Germans in 1944, they immediately began rebuilding Sevastopol as a fortified naval stronghold. During the Cold War, the Black Sea Fleet was equipped with cruise missiles and nuclear weapons, specifically to prevent any power from repeating what Britain and France had done a century earlier. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Crimea suddenly became part of an independent Ukraine. Sevastopol was no longer a Russian port, it was a Ukrainian port that Russia leased. For the Russian military establishment, this arrangement was just, intolerable in the long term. It meant that Russia's only warm-water naval base was sitting on leased land in a country that might one day align with NATO. When Ukraine's government shifted toward Europe in early 2014, Russia moved quickly. Within just a few weeks, the peninsula was occupied by troops that Moscow initially denied were Russian. A referendum was held. Crimea was annexed. The international reaction was condemnation and sanctions. But from the Russian perspective, the decision was driven by a 200-year-old fear that losing control of Crimea meant losing the Black Sea Fleet. The bridge that Russia built after the annexation is not just infrastructure, it is a physical rebuttal to the Crimean War. In 1855, Russia could not supply Sevastopol. Now they have a highway and a railway directly from the mainland, bypassing Ukrainian territory entirely. This is the pattern that really defines Russian strategy in Crimea. Every decision is measured against the historical memory of losing it. History does not repeat itself, but it does leave behind a set of fears that outlive the people who first experienced them. If you value history that goes deeper than the headlines, subscribe to War Machiner. And if this explanation changed how you see the map, share it. The past is not as distant as it looks.